Let me call to order the City Council meeting of March 3rd. Please rise for invocation and pledge allegiance, please.
Father God, we are here tonight to represent the will of the people. We need to never forget our purpose in sitting here as council members. Father God, we pray that you will remind us that all things are possible with your divine intervention. As a council, we always have many challenges facing us daily, whether it be with council items or in our daily living. During this evening's meeting, we're going to offer our condolences to the family of James David Robinson. Father, his life was ended very tragically at a young age. We ask, Father God, that you would surround his mother and all of his family members with your love during this time of grieving. Most of us have never experienced such a tragedy in our life and cannot fully understand the pain and suffering that I am certain the family feels. Many times we ask ourselves why such terrible things happen to good people. We have no answer to that question. We can just pray for and console those who are grieving. Father God, we know that you are our rock and foundation for all of our things in life. And we thank you. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Smith. The next item on our agenda is approval of City Council meeting minutes dated February 18th, 2016. Can I have a motion and a second on those minutes, please?
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and the minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is limited courtesy of the floor. We've had no requests this evening, so we can move on to the next item, which is appointments. I believe the mayor has a couple of appointments this evening. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
Good evening, Dr. President. Members of City Council, it's an honor to be here tonight to ask for your concurrence with two individuals to the Recreation Commission. The first individual is no stranger. I think that she's here at City Council meetings as often as many of us, and that's Mrs. Faith Smith. Faith Smith is the wife of Councilman Skip Smith. They have 2 children, 4 grandchildren. Faith graduated from the Williamsport Area Community College as a licensed practical nurse, and she worked at the Williamsport Hospital and the Williamsport Home. She's a member of St. Paul's Calvary United Methodist Church and is a Sunday school teacher. Faith has helped out the Recreation Commission for many years, and as an appointed member, I'm sure she will do a fine job. The other individual that we are asking for your concurrence, his name is Abe Badness. Abe is from Chicago, Illinois. He was a standout basketball player at Bucknell University, and he is the general manager of our newest facility downtown, the Liberty Arena. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I have a motion and a second on these appointments, please?
So moved. Second.
With a motion and a second, any comments or questions by members of council? Here, Mrs. Katz.
The Rec Commission has always been near and dear to my heart, especially for the past 4 years. I'm really happy to see Abe Badness coming on board. I think what he's going to bring to the table is a lot of interaction with the youth, because he is with youth constantly, every day of the week probably. He, along with Sean Walker, I think are going to be very beneficial to our parks programs. As you know, we've wanted to expand our parks to at least 2 parks this year. And I think these two gentlemen, being where they are involved athletically, it's going to be incredible for them, and to hear what they have to bring. Our youth today, what they have is a lot of hand and eye coordination, but sometimes as far as their physical goes, their athletic and what they do as far as socializing together, sometimes I think that gets neglected. And I think our parks and program has been neglected for so long. And coming back into house, as you brought it into house, I'm very happy that we are going forward with other people. And I know this is going to be very successful. And thank you for bringing it back into house.
Thank you. I'd like to also add, I appreciate City Council's willingness to expand the Recreation Commission, and by also doing that tonight, we're adding additional diversity. This will be the first time, actually, that the Recreation Commission has had any African Americans, and now we're going to have 2 African Americans serving on the Recreation Commission, and that is a great thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, Ms. Frank on the appointments?
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Abstain.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and those appointments are approved. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank
We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a presentation by Print Strategies. Mr. Fitzgerald, how are you this evening?
Doing well, Mr. President. Thank you. Mr. Vice President, members of council, appreciate the opportunity to present tonight. Obviously, I'll be very brief, as there are many more important things on the agenda this evening. And I wanted to particularly congratulate Mrs. Whaley, who was, there she is, for her public service. And when I first got involved in working in government and public service, you were one of the first people I met. So congratulations. And obviously, joining with many others in the city and offering our condolences for your family. So we are, as far as the 3 items that Penn Strategies is focusing on, we are, as per our arrangement as economic development consultant for the city, continuing to work with officials from the administration in Harrisburg and others to advance funding for projects, and also try to identify any potential grant programs that could be brought to bear to assist with any of your budget goals. Additionally, we are monitoring closely the situation related to the levy and how the City of Williamsport will work with partners to make sure that everything that needs to be done there to ensure the safety of the citizens of Williamsport will be done. And that includes obviously looking into some things that will be in front of Public Works soon, and will be discussed further later. And then thirdly, obviously just continuing to try and pursue any general economic development opportunities for the city. And we have been trying to keep you members of council abreast of our progress and what we've been doing, and are always available for questions or concerns or anything of that nature. So thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. Do you have any comments or questions from members of council? I just have a brief question, and it's connected to the email that we received today about, and thank you for that in response to our recent discussions about, the situation in Harrisburg. Just for our records and to make life easier, is there a way we can summarize the most important of the guidelines that we must meet?
Yes, sir.
From that? And,
Absolutely.
And we can talk more about that later. I just hadn't
Yeah,
had a chance
absolutely.
to call you today.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. Anything else from members of council? Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I was just providing that as documentation that the contact had occurred, and
Yeah, no,
we'll
it
get a
was-
memo prepared that outlines specifically, the areas that we need to meet.
How we might proceed going
Absolutely.
forward. All right, great.
Yep.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, for the remainder of the agenda, we may jump around a little bit. So next item on the agenda is a resolution related to James David Robinson. Mrs. Frank, could you read the resolution in its entirety, please?
Resolution, whereas James David Robinson's life came to an untimely and tragic end on January 12, 2014. Whereas the city has entered into a settlement of the case captioned Westbrooks versus DePrenda. Whereas the city has agreed to several non-monetary provisions as part of the settlement. Now therefore, be it hereby resolved as follows. Number 1, City Council authorizes the President of City Council to issue a public apology to Nancy Robinson Westbrooks in the form attached. Number 2, the Cultural Arts Grant Program is renamed the James David Robinson Cultural Arts Grant Program in his memory. Number 3, the President of City Council is authorized to incur expenses not to exceed $200 related to erecting a plaque in Mr. Robinson's honor in City Hall.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second on the resolution?
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Any comments or questions by members of council? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank on the resolution.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and the resolution carries. And with that, Mrs. Westbrook, I am now authorized to, as I indicated to you earlier, read the following. And so let me do that, and then I have a copy to deliver to you as well. Dear Mrs. Westbrook, on behalf of the City of Williamsport, in my capacity as President of City Council and on behalf of Williamsport City Council, I write to express both our sorrow and our apology for the tragic death of your son, James Robinson. The conduct of a particular police officer and issues regarding city training in high-speed pursuits, as alleged in your complaint, have led us to adopt and implement specific policies and training for our police department. While nothing can ever come close to making up for the loss of your son, we hope that the steps we have taken and will continue to take, steps which are a direct result of your pursuit of rights on your son's behalf, will prevent such tragedies from occurring in the future. Again, the city extends you its condolences and its apology. Sincerely, Jonathan Williamson, President of City Council. And before we move on, Mrs. Westbrook requested a moment to say a few words. Mrs. Westbrook.
In this circumstance, there are no winners. There are only losers. But I want to thank council and all people responsible for the renaming of the arts program for my son. My son was one who enjoyed art and music and was pursuing his rap program. I accept on behalf of my family and Jim's friends, I want to thank you for everything that you've done for our family. Thank you.
It feels inappropriate, but the next item on the agenda then is an ordinance amending Article 353, Local Economic Tax Revitalization Tax Assistance Ordinance. In short form, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance amending Article 353 of the Codified Ordinances, the Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance Ordinance.
Can I have a motion and a second on the ordinance, please?
So move.
Second.
Mr. Grado.
Excuse me. Good evening, President Williamson, members of council. This ordinance, LRTA, which is an ordinance council has seen before. We have passed different LRTA ordinances through the 80s and 90s, is an abatement ordinance for new developments. What it provides for is the abatement on additional, the increased assessed value for property that's established by the County Tax Assessment Board. And our ordinance would amend the current ordinance, which was expired in 2011. And that would provide a LRTA abatement over a 7-year period. The first 2 years would be 100% of abatement of the taxes, of the additional taxes. Years 3 and 4 would be 75% of the taxes. The 5th and 6th year would be 50% of the taxes, and the last year would be 25%. And then once that's on year 8, they would be paying the full amount of the city real estate taxes. We've recommended that that ordinance be reenacted for the next 2 years, at least through December 31st, 2018. But what was different this time from previous ones also was last LRTA was for the old enterprise zone. And that area basically was everything in the west end, south of 4th Street, all the commercial industrial area south of 4th. In the central part of the city, it was south of High Street, and in the eastern part of the city, it was south of Washington Boulevard. What we're proposing now are much smaller areas and smaller designated areas. So we've proposed 3 LRTA zones. LRTA Zone 1 is basically the area bounded by Little League Boulevard on the south, Campbell Street on the west, Brandon Avenue, which is really the institutional zone where Susquehanna Health is located, on the north, and Hepburn Street on the east. That really takes in the section, kind of the vacant, blighted area where the Trimtex building's located, and basically we're trying to tie in the undeveloped properties adjacent to the health system and tying it into the central business district. What we're really proposing is kind of a mixed-use development in there. It's a mixture of different zoning districts, but it would give us a tool for providing for new development. LRTA Zone 2 basically is the old city East 3rd Street Gateway area. That's bounded on the west by Market Street, on the east by Catherine, on the south by the Interstate 180, and on the north by the old Lumber Branch Railroad and Washington Boulevard. And the last one is the area just by the Beltway and Maynard Street. It really was the old city landfill. It's where Web Communications is located, and there's the old Flamingo is located there. It's basically an area of about 40 acres. It's been undeveloped. We've rezoned it from light manufacturing to commercial many years ago, and we're just using this as an incentive to try to get some development there. We did meet with the county commissioners at a committee meeting of theirs, as well as the school district and our finance committee on 2 occasions. But this is conditioned on their acceptance of the LRTA ordinance, basically the way this amendment is currently in its current form. This would take 2 readings since it's an ordinance, and it was reviewed, as I indicated, it was reviewed by the Finance Committee and with a positive recommendation.
Thank you. Ms. Mealy from the Finance Committee. Okay. Randy? Mr. Allison?
Yeah, we did review it, and we approved it with a positive recommendation to City Council. We did talk about we had somewhat of a discussion about LRTA Zone 1 and the implementation of this overlapping development with Susquehanna Health and how that would all work out. But it seems that the 2 are mutually exclusive because one is tax exempt anyhow. There may be in the future a need to maybe get more specific about certain properties, how they're going to be developed. If Susquehanna Health would develop properties that potentially could be not tax exempt, we would have to address that then. Then they would still fall under LRTA. So I think there are things we can iron out as we go along. And we talked about a little bit about the $500 application fee that will take care of our administration costs over the length of the LRTA term. So we passed it because we believe it's going to be a tool in the hands of the administration and developers to encourage tax-producing properties. That was about the extent of it.
All right, and the recommendation? Oh, you already said the
I did
recommendation.
say it
I'm
first,
sorry.
yeah.
A little unfocused at the moment. Any other comments or questions by members of council, please? Ms. Mealy?
A couple, only because I just noticed that there's a typo in Section 5 of the amendment to the ordinance. Contingency, it's minor, but we probably ought to fix it. Where it should read, according to the original ordinance, let me see here, it's conditioned upon the school district of the city of Williamsport and the county of Lycoming enacting similar ordinances or resolutions with identical deteriorated areas as those designated by the council of the city of Williamsport, no later than December 31st, 2009, should the school district of the city of Williamsport. It appears as though whoever did the cut and paste accidentally cut out about the end of following council of the city of Williamsport until school district of the city of Williamsport in that contingency clause, which renders it pretty much nonsensical. Say, David, is there a real easy way to do that, to fix that?
It's in 350, 310, right?
350, 310. Pretty much the words, no later than December 31st, 2009, should the school district of the city of Williamsport are missing.
think does that say 2009 or 2016?
Well, excuse me, it should now say 2016. But,
2016, yeah.
no, what I'm saying
is
is,
with identical-
it's missing the phrase, it's missing the phrase from,
The original.
yeah, from the original, no later than December 31st, 2016, should the school district of the city of Williamsport. Those
Okay.
words are missing from the amendment.
Okay, we'll check it out and make sure.
I know it's stupid, and it's a typo, but it probably ought to be corrected, because
Right.
otherwise the phrase doesn't make
Okay.
any sense any longer.
If you will just say, I make a motion to add.
Okay, I'll make a
And then-
motion to amend the amendment.
Actually, you don't even have to do that.
Okay.
You can pass it and amend it at the second reading.
Okay.
Okay, so, okay. And one other
And,
question.
and so the suggestion then would be Mr. Grado would provide us, and then we would accept the entire revised one as a substitute or something along those. Okay.
And one other small question, Mr. Grado. LERTA Zone 3 is still showing that chunk of land on the other side of the highway that I thought we had decided wasn't to be included in.
Yeah, that, it's not in the description.
Yeah,
That's part of
exactly.
the ordinance. I think the sketches are basically for visual purposes.
So the
It's-
sketches are not going to be included in the ordinance?
Yes. In the description that's described in section 1, it doesn't go south of Interstate 180.
I understand that. I guess I'm just saying, once again, for posterity, it might be somewhat confusing if we have a
All
sketch
right,
that differs
I can
from
amend
wording.
this, I'll white out the section below it. Okay.
As long as we're making changes. Those are my only two questions, just really minor.
Okay.
Otherwise, I think this is an excellent idea, and hopefully will give us at least a small tool in the toolbox to try and incentivize development in some areas that need it in the city.
Okay. Other comments or questions, Mr. Allison?
One thing I forgot was Section 4 of the new ordinance. We asked to be included in this, the second sentence there, no later than October 1st annually, the mayor shall submit a written report to council which shall inform council as to how this article has been administered and the effects of this article in the community, including blah, 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 blah. So we felt it was important to have a yearly update on how LERTA is being, and we do get that, but, you know, with a little more detail about what we're getting or what it's producing.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? The only comment that I have is a basic idea that was already part of the original ordinance that had expired in effect, and in one of the paragraphs that will continue to be true under the newer ordinance. I think it's important to note that this LERTA holds the city harmless. In other words, we will not be giving up revenue and therefore increasing the current tax burden on taxpayers. The revenue that we will receive from the properties in the zones will continue to come to us. We are just deferring the additional revenue that we might receive because, as a way to incentivize the development. So we don't make ourselves worse off. At worst, we will be the same for some period of time as a means to encourage the development. But then as the LERTA phases itself out, because of the development, then we'll be better off. And I think it's important for the public to understand that it is not shifting tax burden in any way. It's simply encouraging the growth of future tax revenue, which should relieve tax burden down the road. Hearing no other comments or questions, Ms. Frank, on the ordinance in first reading, please.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and the ordinance carries in first reading. Next item on the agenda is resolution approving change orders for 2015 street reconstruction project. Mrs. Frank.
A resolution approving change orders number 4, and number 5 of the 2015 street reconstruction project. Whereas City Council awarded the contract for 2015 street reconstruction project to HRI in the amount of $793,105.60 plus change order number 1 amounting to $28,670.97 for an adjusted contract amount of $821,776.57. Be it hereby resolved that the City Council of the City of Williamsport approves change order number 4 in the amount of $241,379.67 for UGI Utilities, and then change order number 5 in the amount of $61,508.68 for the Williamsport Municipal Water and Sanitary Authority for adjusted contract amount of $1,134,334.66 to the 2015 street reconstruction project.
Thank you, Ms. Frank. May I have a motion and a second on the resolution?
So move.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Grado. How are you?
Yeah.
Again?
Yes, good evening again. This resolution is authorizing a change order to our 2015 street reconstruction project, which we've awarded the contract to HRI. They finished most of our streets last year. They have about 20% of the streets to do in early this year, as soon as the plants open up. But we've been working with the utility companies since they're doing a great deal of excavation, street excavation cuts. That now, under our new policy, requires them to either mill and overlay the half width of the street or the full width of the street, depending on the number of cuts and the locations. And they've agreed to permit HRI to do it at the unit cost for the square yards of the milling and the paving. So there's a substantial amount of additional paving that's going to be done by them. And the gas company, there's roughly 14 streets or portions of streets, and most of those are located, if you recall, all the work that was done on Hepburn Street, Pine, 6th and 7th, and Memorial Avenue. So those streets would either get a half mill or, in the case of Pine and Hepburn, a full mill overlay. So that's about $241,379, and UGI will be paying that cost once the work is complete. And the other is the Water Authority. They are doing a great deal of work, but this work is more focused in the Newberry area, Hillside Ridge, Newberry Street, and then Sherman Street in the East End. So both utility companies agreed to the unit cost, and the contractor agreed to do the additional work, and that'll be done when they finish up our projects. Should take about maybe 6 to 8 weeks to complete it, but they'll start it in April, probably finish it the end of May, early June. So it is a substantial amount of work. It was reviewed by both Public Works and Finance.
All right, thank you, Mr. Smith from Public Works.
Public Works Committee reviewed this on Tuesday of this week, and we've discussed here previously about all of the work that has been done previously by UGI and the Williamsport Municipal Water Authority. We've had, obviously, some complaints about some of the streets, the patching that had been done. And just as a refresher, UGI is on a massive reconstruction schedule due to the extensive damage that was done by the explosion in Allentown a few years ago. UGI is under a federal mandate that they have to replace most all cast iron piping within their service area. So you probably have seen a very aggressive schedule occurring in the city. And as Mr. Grado pointed out, UGI is going to be paying for this. So we're going to have a lot of new street reconstruction done at no cost to the city. And I just want to it'll only take a minute, for me to read the streets that are going to be on here. Charlotte Street, Southview Avenue, Hebron Street, Maple Avenue, Maple Street, Center Street, Hebron Street, Pine Street, 7th Street, 6th Street, Graffia Street, Court Street, State Street, Ross Street, and Memorial Avenue. These are the areas that are going to be paved either in half width or full width, depending on the width of the street. The Municipal Water Authority is also upgrading a lot of old service lines, and the same contract is going to be involving them, and we're looking at Hillside Avenue, Ridge Avenue, Newberry Street, Sherman Street, and again, Newberry Street. There's several sections involved in those streets. So you're going to see a lot of construction starting very soon now. It's going to be doing this work, and also, as I mentioned, UGI will be on an aggressive project also. So while this is going on, they are going to be working on a lot of areas, and so is the water company. And we meet with both of those entities usually once a month so that we have an update on what they're doing. We have a very good communications line open between both of these utilities and the Public Works Committee, the Codes Department, and the Engineering Department. We insist on this because of the fact that there are so many streets going to be excavated, new piping, and so forth put in. So as we call it here in the committee, temporary inconvenience, but a permanent improvement. So we do ask that the public understand what is happening, what's going on, and believe me, Public Works Committee is on top of all of this, and there's going to be a lot of reconstruction starting this year by PennDOT on the West 4th Street Bridge over Lycoming Creek, and then there are going to be preliminary starting the major reconstruction from that bridge westward to the entrance to the Williamsport Area School District High School. So that's going to be an extensive project, and we meet quite often with PennDOT and our city administration, city streets, and so forth to make sure that that's going to go as smoothly as possible, because that is a major, major project, one of the biggest that we've seen in this city in many, many years. So we just want to let you know that we are on top of these things. And on this particular resolution, we voted to send it to full council with a positive recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Mealy, was this the same meeting? Mr. Allison, thanks, sorry.
We did also review this. Obviously, there wasn't a lot to talk about as far as the finances because it's pretty straightforward and clear cut. We did talk a little bit about some of the things that Mr. Smith has already referenced, and we do appreciate the good job that Public Works Committee and the administration are doing, keeping up with this aggressive schedule. The Water Authority and Sanitary Sewer Authority are also under a federal mandate from Chesapeake Bay Commission and everything that involves to upgrade their facilities. So that's why there is so much going on. And it is a nice coincidence for us at a time when we don't have as much money as we did to put into streets, that this kind of supplements that program. The only other thing that we did discuss was one area that the Water and Sewer Authority has worked in is that isn't anywhere on this schedule is the Valemont area. So if any citizens are concerned about that, that is going to be on the schedule, possibly in the fall of 2016 or the spring of 2017. So those streets that need attention and repaving and finishing, they're not included in this group here, but they are in the queue. They're coming up, so those citizens there can expect to see those roads improved as well. And we pass it to the full body council with a positive recommendation.
Thank you. Other comments or questions from members of council? Ms. Mealy?
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Grado. None of these streets in the Hepburn and Graffius project area are currently brick streets, correct?
Currently what?
Brick streets? that are-
Brick?
that are in our ordinance?
No, there's, the one street we're doing is Graffius Street, but everything north of 6th, I think that was removed. I think we paved those streets. So the one south of 6th Street, there are temporary patches that have to be restored permanently in brick, and they're going to be done by the gas company's contractor.
Everything then is in order. We won't be getting an approval
Yeah,
to
not
take anything off the
every,
brick streets ordinance later.
right, the brick streets that are still part of our ordinance still have to be restored in brick.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank on the resolution, please.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes?
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and the resolution passes. Next item on the agenda is certificate of appropriateness for 100 West 3rd Street. Mr. Girardi, how are you this evening?
Good, President Williamson. How are you, sir?
Good,
Good.
mostly.
What you have before you, this is for 100, if I'm correct, 100 West 3rd Street?
Yes.
Okay, what you have before you is a certificate of appropriateness request to erect a digital sign on the west side of the existing canopy. The sign will be approximately 4 foot by 5 foot. The building is located in the central business district, and I have attached a set of a photograph which will show you exactly what it will look like when it is erected. The sign will only put things up that deal with that particular facility there. Shows and so forth that go on in that facility.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second on their certificate, please?
So move.
Motion. Hearing a motion and a second. Comments or questions, members of council? Mr. Noviello?
Joe, I just was curious, the sign is obviously digital. Is it going to be animated in
No.
any way other than language itself?
No, just language itself. Basically, it would advertise. What there used to be is the older type of signage where you take the sign down with the long handle, put it down, put it up. This is to make it easier for them. If there's a show on that particular day or that evening, that'll be advertising that particular show.
I'm always concerned about animated signs as we come to intersections.
Correct.
So this satisfies me.
Right.
Thank you.
Ms. Mealy?
Didn't we at some point see a similar item from Trade and Transit Center? And whatever happened with that?
There were lights, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought we saw something. I thought we reviewed another signage request with,
You may be correct, but I don't remember. But you may be correct.
Well, there was a review during land development and other certificate appropriateness action, but then we brought all the signs back because I think the question was only about the portal and,
No, this
but
was actually-
we're just bringing all the signs back just for
That was a nice
one more
little-
review. I
this
think.
was specifically for the
Trade and
CTL
Transit
building.
1.
Trade and Transit 1. It was several years ago now.
Yeah.
Right.
But I apologize that that's all I can remember.
To make it look like a marquee, it had lights on the top,
Yeah,
I
exactly,
believe.
I thought.
Oh, yeah, I think, and there was another digital sign maybe that was proposed for in front of it, and, but I think that was eliminated, those particular accents, I guess, for the sign.
The only reason I'm asking is that this doesn't necessarily look like it's going to make it doesn't look like a part of the facade, so to speak. Do you know what I'm saying? And this being kind of a showpiece building, while I certainly don't think it's objectionable for a short period of time, it might be the sort of thing where if it's something we're interested in having there in the long term, it might benefit us to try and find something that's a little more, that fills the marquee, for instance, so that there's not still kind of an obvious space where we used to hang letters.
What you're saying is make it look more like the marquee, the canopy itself than just a sign placed on the canopy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, again, this is for the Trade and Transit 1, and it's only on the west side, so people coming down Third Street can see it. If we do anything more, it'll probably be more elaborate if you're talking about the front of the marquee or the east side of the marquee. But this is simply just replacing what is now manual to a electronic sign.
My assumption is also then that they won't be doing manual lettering on the other side of the marquee either any longer?
No, I think they're going to still be doing, I presume they'll still want to keep that. I don't know. That's up to the Community Theater League.
I would imagine, Mr. Girardi, that it meets our sign ordinance. But to me, it doesn't necessarily, correct?
What's that again, I'm sorry?
It meets our design ordinance downtown.
Yes, oh, exactly. It meets section, it's 1107.3 of the zoning ordinance. It does meet all the requirements as far as size, look, location.
But personally, I would say that city buildings should be held to a higher standard, and personally, I'm not of the opinion that this signage is an improvement to the facade as it stands. Not that we couldn't come up with something that would provide them with the same utility, but that this particular element doesn't seem to do that to me. Thank you.
This is, because of construction of the marquee, you can't really insert it into the marquee, but it's not an inexpensive sign. So, it's the best. There's nothing really out there that we can do any better than in terms of a sign that's actually digital. So, unless someone has any suggestions, but this is the best we can come up with in terms of providing that kind of signage.
Into it moving forward,
Yeah, that's fine.
simply looking at it, it says to me, the other one on the facade of the other building seems more in keeping. It seems to fit within the space allotted to it, and to have a sort of, perhaps it's not exactly spectacular, but it does, it does seem to fit into the facade, but this, obviously, we'll look at that in the next certificate of appropriateness. This one just seems a little, kind of like an afterthought. So, anyway, Mr. Nichols, I'm happy to look into it a bit further if you're open to changing it out, but yeah, it doesn't seem to me to be a perfectly harmonious choice for one of our buildings. Thank you.
Other comments, Mrs. Katz?
I think what Ms. Mealy is saying is that it doesn't seem to fit the marquee. If it went the whole length of the marquee there.
The
See
full
how it
width?
just,
Yeah, well,
it's-
that was the,
Is that what you're saying?
that was,
It just-
yeah, that
Along those
was the
lines?
best fit that we could come up with in terms of dimensions of those type of signs. It comes in certain section sizes, so the next size would be too large, I guess is the best way to put
Is
it.
that what, okay. Because it's like the top of it where it says the, if that was cut off, maybe it wouldn't,
Yeah, it's true. It would look a
Yeah.
little better that way, or if it were just wider, perhaps.
Like a 16 by 9 orientation instead of a 4 by 3.
I think we all understand where they're coming from, because it's a lot of extra work, but it does look like this is just an afterthought of something, placed there. And this is a beautiful building. You put a lot of time and effort and money into this, and I guess we're concerned that this doesn't look appropriate.
Other comments or questions by members of council? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank?
Ms. Mealy?
No.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
I'm going to have to say no.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes. And the certificate is approved. The next item on the agenda is certificate of appropriateness for 144 West 3rd Street.
Yes, this certificate of appropriateness request is for the building next door. There's basically three things they're requesting. The original approval for the building and the look of the material was on November 7th of 2013, and the council requested that the signage, the front entrance, and also the portal come back through for an approval process. So now we're here at this point. What you have is two identification signs. One's a digital sign on the front of the building. One is an electronic informational sign on the rear, and they have made some revisions to the front entrance. Also, there is a portal that's being erected off of Williams Street. I have attached drawings showing the front entrance with the digital sign above, which, as you were saying, fits the whole canopy or that little bar that goes across there, so looks like it's part of that. You also see the sign of the Uptown Music Collective to the right of the door. You also see the signage hanging on both sides indicating Uptown Music Collective. Plus, above that entrance, the next 2 floors, it's all glass. It is a defined entrance as the ordinance requires. The next one you'll see is the picture, if you have them in the same order I do, I'm not sure. The actual portal that was constructed, or not constructed, that will be constructed. And then you also have the other sign that's in the back of the building, and that is the electronic informational sign. That will be indicating different times of events. If you remember correctly, Uptown Music Collective will be in this facility. There is an area out back where the band can play at night. This would be something that you see very similar into rock concerts or concerts that you go to where they have it up on the TV screen. It'll be seen visibly from the rear. It's not seen from Williams. It's not seen from 4th Street, or it's not seen from 3rd Street. It's in the back courtyard area. And we do have representation here if you have any questions of myself or Mr. Nichols.
All right, thank you. Can I have a motion and a second on this certificate?
Second.
With a motion and a second, comments or questions from members of council? Ms. Mealy?
I particularly enjoyed the dancing couple in the rendering. What's that? I'm pretty sure they're dancing. There's a dancing couple in the rendering, anyway.
They look familiar. Who is that?
The display sign that's on the rear of the building, is that the one, it looks like maybe it's actually going to kind of function as like a television screen? Okay, as in to blow up, something like
Right.
like a performance or something like that. Yeah, it's that. Okay.
Similar to what you see with Genetti, I guess, would be the best.
Oh, okay.
Different things on live events. First Fridays, if you Bill wanted to, Mr. Nichols, they could put a camera out and show that what people are doing in the downtown community. First Fridays, you have a concert out back, the band that's playing could be up on the screen. Very similar to those types of things.
That's what I was
Right.
wondering.
It's
So
not
that
used for
kind of
off-premise
definition.
advertisements, which is not permitted by the ordinance.
Okay. But that kind of information, it's that kind of definition too, right? Okay. And we don't anticipate, I know there are things like this in stadiums across the country and everything, but it's not going to cost us a bunch of upkeep or something like that. We're not going to have issues maintaining it, so that it'll be there and be, okay. Otherwise, I think all of this looks pretty good. Mr. Nichols, do we have an anticipated completion date on this project? May? Fantastic. That's everything.
All right, other comments or questions? The one thing I would say on this is I appreciate the responsiveness to the questions and concerns in the past of council on the signage related to the building. In particular, on the 4th Street side, I think the signage has evolved in such a way that is has more lasting value and more attractive, especially oriented towards pedestrians, more defining that entrance and more in keeping with what we see along that streetscape, especially as is indicated, the attractive front of the original Trade and Transit building. I also want to recognize and appreciate the work that was done in partnership between Mr. Nichols and others on his team with the students at Penn College. I think that was a neat project and a collaboration that really adds to the story that we're telling there. And in particular, wanted to take a moment to recognize, and help me out, Mr. Nichols, the student whose design served as the launching point for the portal that's being constructed.
Yeah, that's on page 5 and 9, and the individual's name, Brett Mulroy, was the student that was his drawing or his design was selected as the baseline approach to what we did.
So I want to thank Brett Mulroy and all his colleagues for having done the work that they did. There's a lot of interesting designs, some of which my eye says are really great, and some of my eye says maybe it would be perfect in some other location. But in the case of the one Brett designed and that Bill and his team selected, I think it is an appropriate and attractive choice and will add to the streetscape along William. So I wanted to make a point to note that contribution to the overall project. Hearing no other comments and questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Allison.
What started as merely a replacement of the old deck, and how long ago was that?
18,
It was,
3 years ago? I don't know. The
It-
whole
it-
process has taken 11 years, so.
yeah, but we began to have preliminary discussions before that. Mrs. Whaley was on council at that time when we were talking about the deck in that area, and what it was going to become or who was going to be involved. And to see it evolve into this great project that's now brought in different groups like Uptown Music, and it's created more space for Community Theater League, and everything there has really enhanced this development, and we all appreciate the many permutations that Mr. Nichols has had to shepherd this through, and we have a good project. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole process, while lengthy and complicated, I think at the end of the day, I think
Yeah.
this truly was the best solution.
And one thing you can't say is that the public had a chance to get their input on this one.
Lots of public input, yeah. All right, thank you. Mrs. Frank on the certificate, please.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and the certificate is approved. Next item on the agenda is certificate of appropriateness for 210 William Street. Mr.
Yes.
Girardi?
Thank you. This request is to erect 2 business identification signs. We did add one late. I think you have 2 pictures of a ground sign also. Yes, you have a ground sign and then, okay. First of all, the first sign would be a sign that's internally illuminated channel letters, which is consistent with that particular area down there, the Holiday Inn, the Wegmans, they all have those style of signs that are mounted on the wall. The other sign is a ground sign, which I attached a photo to. There was originally 2 ground signs there. One was removed because it's not permitted by code to have 2 ground signs. So they did eliminate one, or in the process, I have not gone back and looked, but one of them was going to be eliminated. These were both erected prior to the appropriateness. It was by accident of the owner. The owner had the intent to come in, did forget about doing it. The signs were there and erected them. Typically, our policy has always been the fee is doubled, and that's what the process we went through. So the signs are there now presently.
Okay, thank you, and
We do have representation here.
All right, can I have a motion and a second on their certificate, please?
So move.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, comments or questions from members of council? Thank you for the explanation about the 2 ground signs, and it was going to be a question when I saw them pop up and know that we hadn't taken action, and also for the, I know that's been about a year now, maybe, that we've had that policy in place to encourage people to follow the process. And more have, I think,
Correct.
as a result.
Right.
And you indicated that the channel lettered sign is consistent with the other signs in the area.
Correct.
I'm not sure if you intended to not say that about the ground sign, but I'm gonna ask, is that consistent with other signs in the area?
I'm going to say the ground sign that it's not consistent with others' ground signs that are in that particular area. That's correct.
And that's in particular because is it a internally lit ground sign?
No,
It is not lit at all,
I don't believe, you don't have lighting on the sign. No.
and nor is it externally, like from the ground, illuminated in any way like that. Is it consistent with our existing sign ordinance?
Yes, it is.
Okay, both in size and in style, materials, et
That's
cetera?
correct. That's the reason why we had to eliminate the other one, because that was not consistent.
Okay. One of the things that periodically has come up on council, in my time on the council, is that it has been many years, and I'm guessing decades, although I haven't looked at it lately, that since we've updated our sign ordinance.
That's correct.
To reflect changes in both the aesthetics of the community and also in, I guess, sign technology would be
Right.
the term for it. And as I always say, we never should do that review specific to an existing proposal that is consistent with our ordinance, but we should consider prompting that. And so maybe helping us to remember that we need to do that review. And so maybe one of our committees can take up that task in working together with you. Possibly ERC would be appropriate.
Because, and you are correct, the ordinance hasn't been revised in many, many years, and technology gets so advanced. I know there's been a lot of people talking about animated signs. You know, they would like to have them because it is the thing of what's going on, and we don't have that. We don't permit animated signs in the city of Williamsport. So there are things that we really probably should look at and hopefully change.
Okay, and so maybe I can ask you and Mr. Allison, I think you're chair of the RC, correct, to put that on the agenda down the road as your time allows. That was all my questions. Any others? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank on the certificate.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and that certificate is approved. Next item on the agenda.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Next item on the agenda, I was asked to move this a little bit further down the list, where normally we'd deal with ordinances a bit earlier in our agenda, is an ordinance designating J. Marlene Whaley Way. And Mrs. Frank, can I have you read the ordinance in full, please?
An ordinance designating J. Marlene Whaley Way. Be it hereby ordained by the City Council of the City of Williamsport as follows. Section 1, the public street now designated as Walnut Street between Little League Boulevard and High Street also be hereafter designated as J. Marlene Whaley Way. Section 2, the proper city officials are hereby authorized and directed to make such designation upon the official map of the City of Williamsport. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect 20 days after final enactment.
Thank you. And may I have a motion and a second on the ordinance, please?
So move.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, it's my pleasure to make the presentation of the ordinance to council and request their approval. I was approached recently about the opportunity and privilege of recognizing Mrs. Whaley for her contributions to the city in a variety of ways, especially timing, I think, as we're approaching, I'm sure Mr. Grado wouldn't say we're actually at the completion of the Pathway to Health project, but we're approaching the completion of that project, which was a project that started, I don't remember when. It was 5, maybe, at a time in which Williamsport was a very different place, in which the city was at risk of losing its largest employer. And it was a time in which it was just beginning to be started in my own involvement in city government. And I remember seeing the fear, I think, in everyone of losing the hospital and that asset to the city, and losing the employment and the tax base and all of that because of the business decisions that the health system may have had to have made at the time. And the thing that I particularly remember as the city went through that entire process of figuring out how we could work together as partners with our health system to maintain the health system at its Williamsport campus was the leadership that Mrs. Whaley provided and the sacrifice that she and her husband made as part of that leadership in being willing to, in a very, very personal way, different than the kind of leadership that most of us try to provide as elected officials, but in really voluntarily choosing to move out of her neighborhood as a means to sacrifice for the greater good of the city of Williamsport. And so when I was approached recently about thinking about how we might appropriately recognize her contributions as a leader of the city, and her, as well, it shouldn't be forgotten, her historic role as the first African-American and African-American woman, two separate categories there, I suppose, as a member of City Council, amongst her many other contributions. I began to think and talk to others about how we might appropriately recognize her. And so talking to Mr. Grado and thinking about the pathway to health and her leadership role with keeping the hospital here in the city, we thought Walnut Street was an appropriate place to recognize her. That was not only her address, and help me out, what was the number?
704.
704 Walnut Street, which itself couldn't be recognized because we vacated that as part of the entire project. But also thinking about the role that Walnut Street played as part of that process as the gateway to the hospital as it stands now, as it played a role in her and her family's life as a resident of that neighborhood. Even thinking about that as her pathway to her beloved club from her front door down the street.
You got that right.
And it was my pleasure to be her guest there at a couple times, and so that stuck in my mind. And so we thought it appropriate. I thought it was appropriate that we might recognize her by renaming Walnut Street in the stretch between Little League Boulevard and High Street in her honor. And of course, on a technical, boring basis, what that means is we don't want to make the post office unhappy and have to make people change their address formally. So we do it in a way that we've done it in the historic district and in a number of other places throughout the city. Her name will adorn the signs above the continuing signage of Walnut Street, and be appropriately recognized in that way. So with that, I ask for council's approval and would recognize other members of council for any comments or questions. Mrs. Katz.
Marlene.
I'm
so
a
many
little
things.
hard of hearing, so
Okay.
talk a little louder, please.
Marlene, you have been a friend, a mentor for so many years. We've had so many great conversations. You are a woman who has always spoke your mind. You've made us laugh, you've frustrated us, and you've challenged us. But you've been a wonderful person. And I do have to say, over the years, you have been one of the only council person that really made it to so many special events that were occurring all over the city. And it was, I know I was really happy. This was even way before I was on city council, and so many things that we were involved in with the business association downtown, with so many events. You always showed up. You always were there to support. And you were always there for other events. And I think everybody just loved you for that because they knew the love of your city. But I've loved being your friend. And like I said, you've made me laugh a lot, and I think you've made a lot of us laugh a lot over the years. But thank you for everything you've done for the city. Thank you very much. And your husband, who has been there, God love you, you've sat through those special events also. And I'm telling you, I know he doesn't say too much, Marlene. He just sits there.
I do all the talking.
I know. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of council, Mr. Smith.
As Dr. Williamson pointed out, Marlene was, to my knowledge, the first woman to be president of City Council, and correct me if I'm wrong, and the first Afro-American person to also be president of City Council, which I think was a great accomplishment. And over the years that we knew Marlene, we found out that she was quite a unique person. There was never a dull moment with Marlene, was there? There was some tense moments, and there was some lighter moments. And the tense moments I tend to forget, but the lighter moments I tend to remember. And there was a couple of those. And I'm not going to mention the names to protect the guilty. One of those incidents was, there was a gentleman at the podium speaking, and it became quite lengthy and quite complex. And Marlene looked at him and she said, "I don't understand at all this mumbo-jumbo that you're going through." And neither did we, Marlene. You weren't the only one. But you so aptly put that. The next incident that I recall, we were getting ready for an executive session. And we were coming to the table. We hadn't started yet. And Mr. Maroney still was around the area. And he's back here laughing. I think he knows what I'm going to say. And another guilty person who I won't mention. And Marlene got into a little bit of a tiff. And it got a little bit louder and a little bit louder. And Marlene says, "You can kiss my blank, blank, blank." And you should have seen Mark Maroney. He went like this. He ran out of here so fast, he says, "I got to get that in the headlines of the paper tomorrow morning." And it was in the paper. Do you remember that, Marlene?
I remember it very well. I was going to talk about it tonight, too.
And I think you went to the favorite club right after that. And had one or two.
Went to the favorite club.
Oh, I did. And I had a few, too, because I was really ticked off.
And then the last thing that I just want to mention is, you know, sometimes we council members, we disagree with one another, but we try to, again, do the best for the residents of the area and our city. And this was concerning the Maynard Street corridor. And there was a plan put together by the county. And I expressed at that public council meeting my views, which were somewhat in disagreement with some of the other folks. And Marlene very vehemently disagreed with me. And about 2 days later, on the editorial page of the paper, this long, from the top to the bottom, was a letter about me. and that shows democracy. You know, Marlene and I didn't agree on that issue, so she decided to write an editorial to the paper about me. And that's okay. You know, that's what we have a right to do. But we did respect each other, even though that we had a disagreement. And I will certainly, Marlene, never forget that what you have given to the city of Williamsport and to City Council. And it was enjoyable working with you. It really was. And we had a great time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Mr. Noviello.
First off, congratulations to Mrs. Whaley. Secondly, just by sheer percentages alone, the number of people that take a forward step in their communities to take on the types of responsibilities that you've been responsible for is pretty limited. So I wouldn't suggest that it's particularly rare, but not quite as common as we might like it to be. Certainly, you made that step forward on behalf of the city and have played a major role in placing us where we are today, and I want to thank you for that time, and that energy, and that effort.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions, Mrs. Mealy? Ms. Mealy?
Well, unusually and very pleasantly, Marlene, we've actually saved the best for last in a council meeting. And I had the pleasure of spending, was it my first 4 years? My first 2 years on city council with Marlene. And it was an invaluable experience. I'd like to think that someday, Marlene, I'll be able to tell it like it is, just the way you did. But in the meantime, I miss you. I think we probably all miss you up here and your influence up here. And, well, thank you. It's meant a lot to us. And someday maybe I'll get to tell somebody to kiss my whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Mr. Allison?
I remember your last meeting with council, and we said things complimentary about you and the personal things we felt, and I still hold dear in my heart that you put in me the understanding that we need to protect what council does. You were a real defender of the rights of council, the responsibilities of council, because people can tend to get sloppy or lazy and let things slide, but you would never let that happen. And you always told the truth, what you thought, and that really, I never had to wonder, now what does Marlene really think about something? Because you just spoke what you thought, and I really appreciated that so much when I remember the conversations we'd have about different things, and you would say, I don't play games. I want the straight truth. I want the facts. Now, if you want to play games, I'll play games, but you won't like it. And
Right.
you put everybody on notice, and that was, it was good. It keeps the air clean. You got right to the point. But more so than that, just to get to know you as a person, I can say, I appreciate you, I love you, wish the best for you. You're always in my wife and I's prayers. You've meant so much to us and to this community. We have the resolution from when you left council, and she was the first female city council president and the first African American to serve on city council. It took a long time for that to happen. It took too long. Having grown up in this community, knowing that there was a time when that wasn't even possible for a certain segment of our community to even aspire to that. And you had to break through those barriers to get there. And it took a person that was strong, with strong convictions, to make it through. But you did it because of the kind of person you are. And we need more people like that. And we need more African Americans to serve in our government locally. And, I know that day is going to come. You're the first, you're not going to be the last. And it's not a quota thing. It's not, you represented something, but you were never a token. You were here to get the job done. And you acquitted yourself well. And and that legacy is going to live on. And what little that we can do to help that live on, we're going to do. But I think in the hearts and minds of the people of Williamsport, you've made an impression that's going to leave a heritage down the road. Love you and wish the best for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mr. Henderson.
I might just add briefly, we haven't had much interaction together. I'm just getting on the scene here, but I do appreciate the example that you have given to my generation and so many of us here, as we've already heard. An example that of a person that refuses to be defined by others, refuses to be defined by your surroundings or by any culture, but just stands for what is true and what is right and just does what needs to be done. And we need more people like that in this city, in this nation. And so it is highly appropriate that we recognize you for that. And I hope that that generations of people that will drive by that sign and say, I wonder who that was. Well, I hope that there will be others that will be able to say, let me tell you about Marlene Way. And so we thank you. We thank you for your service. And I thank you personally for the example that you've set for me as a council person.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Everybody that's sitting out there, say thank you to Marlene because you really sat comfortably tonight. It was due to Marlene, okay?
Those cushions. Mr. Mayor as well.
Marlene, congratulations. Just want to say, appreciate everything you've done, city government. You're a very honest lady. I know you and I have had some interesting conversations over the years. We definitely have livened up city government, I would say that. When I think of you in your leadership, standing up there and sitting up there as well, there was no one in the history of this city that could use that gavel like you have. Because I remember at times you kept this place in order, because you would say to somebody, you step out of line, I'm going to gavel you down. And you did. And you kept order.
That was my job.
And I appreciate that. I will always consider you a good friend. Thank you for your love for the city, and you deserve this honor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
The only thing I would add, and I could add much, much more, is I now sit in your seat. And my first day was council was your first day, I believe, as president, and I watched.
Yes.
And I learned, and I'm never going to have the style that this lady had in that seat, ever. But I hope that I do your seat justice.
You will.
Hearing no other comments or from council, Mrs. Frank, on the ordinance in first reading, please.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and the ordinance carries in first reading. And there was a tradition started when Mrs. Whaley was in the role of council president that we've kept going for a while, and we don't always get to use it, but we occasionally do get to use the easy button to indicate that we're unified and we're able to go through what was on our agenda in a fairly easy fashion. And so in this case, I think it's appropriate to make sure that this gets some attention from the microphone. But I think we're pretty unanimous in our support, so I think it qualifies for you to press the easy button.
That was easy.
There we go. And if you'd like to comment, please do.
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, and all members of City Council, this is truly, truly an honor, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. All the things that were said tonight, I will just say, I did enjoy my tenure of 12 years on City Council. Most time, it was rewarding. But I just want to say thank you for giving me this honor while I'm alive to see it. Thank you so much. To the mayor, the administration, and all those sitting here, to the listening audience, I would not be standing here tonight had it not been for the 17 wards that voted for me in 1999. When I first started out and decided that I would make a run for City Council, Steve Capelli was the mayor then. And his wife, Erin, was my chairperson of the campaign. Mike Orico and Dale Wagner ran my campaign. There were so many people that helped me. And like I said before, in this life, we do nothing by ourselves. My case, the way I was brought up by my mom and my dad, God was the forefront of our family. And I don't mean to take away from anybody's religion, but when you believe and you know that there is a God, I have to sing his praises. But also, my mom taught us that when you become of age, that you give back to your community, that you do whatever is expected of you to do to help your city, to help your country, and never forget your humble beginnings. It was my dad who said, "Your mom looks through rose-colored glasses." He said, "I'm telling you, there are a lot of good people, but everybody isn't good." He said, "I'm telling you to watch your back." And you know what? That was some real good advice too. And believe me, I watched my back. Because people will, for whatever reason, stab you in the back, make up stories, whatever. But as long as there's a God and that you believe in him, he knows the truth. I just want to say that my tenure on City Council, I had so much help. So many people helped me. I did not do it by myself. And when I look around this room and I see the council people that I worked with and how they helped me, when I look at the administration and I see Bill Nichols and John Grado, you know these are two great guys in this city. And when they retire, we're going to be in trouble. So they better start now looking for somebody to take their place, because I don't know if there's anybody that can take their place. But when I got on City Council, these two gentlemen, they were such a great asset to me. I mean, I was in their office all the time, and I was always asking Bill Nichols for money, and for this or for that or whatever. And John Grado, they taught me so much. And then when the mayor hired Mr. Girardi, I'll tell you, that's the best thing that could have ever happened to your department, okay? But he's doing such a fabulous job, and I was in his office all the time, too. But I'll tell you one thing I will say about that codes department. That's a great department. The only thing is, they don't get paid enough money, and I always said that, okay? And now I think that they really deserve a raise next year, Mayor, so I think you better look into that, okay? And we'll talk more about that later, okay? But there's so many of you that did so much for me. And, you know, when you start naming names, you always forget somebody. And if I forget somebody, I'm sorry. But, you know, when I was on city council, when Mike Wiley and Pat Marty came on board, they were two gentlemen that I'll tell you, anytime whatever I asked them to do, whether they wanted to do it or not, they did it. Now, I can think of a couple of times, I guess maybe I went overboard, but they were always, we were just friends. We're still friends. We talk on the phone. We go out to lunch. Then along comes Jerry Fosnot. And you know, sometimes God puts people in your life. And I thank God for Jerry Fosnot, because the day she announced, she called me up, she said, let's go out to lunch. And I thought, oh, do I really want to do this? The best thing I ever did. Jerry and I are the best of friends. In fact, we're like family. Her whole family is like my family. And she cares about what happens in my family to all of us, not just me, but to all of us. And, you know, God is good. It's such a blessing. And then, to me, it's like, I love this city. I always have. And I get so angry at a lot of things that are going on in the city today. And the way people talk about Williamsport. And you know what? I could tell them a lot. But what goes, the shootings, everything that happens, it's just not Williamsport. Read the newspaper. Listen to the news on the radio. It's all over the United States, not just Williamsport. We have a great city. And we should be proud of our mayor. We should be proud of city council and the job they do, and how the administration works so hard. Let's stop, and I guess I'm really talking not just to you here, but to the listening audience. Care about this city. We have a great city. And if you don't like the way things are being done or being run, then get in there and help do it yourself instead of taking us down. I'm getting sick and tired of all the negativity. We all have things happen in our families, okay? I have a grandson that's in jail right now, but I love him to death. Yes, he's made mistakes, but all of us have made mistakes in our lives. Let's stop tearing this city down. Let's build it up. Now, Mr. Smith, you mentioned something, okay, that I was going to set the record straight. And I'm not apologizing either. But I'm going to tell you like it really happened. That night, I was talking to Mr. Where you at, Mark? Where'd he go? Oh, there he is. I was talking to that reporter, one-on-one. Nobody was in this room but the reporter and me. And yes, you heard me. You guys were out there, but you heard me, all right? Now, Mr. Maroney was telling me something that he shouldn't have been telling me. The mayor should have told me, but he didn't. And I'm thinking, and I said to him, well, what are you doing telling me? Why am I not talking to the mayor? And he goes, da-da, and I'm not going to tell you everything, but he goes, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I said, that's blackmail, okay? Then came the famous words. Now, remember, there's nobody in this room but me and him. So, he said to me, is that for publication? And I said, what difference does it make? You don't have the guts to print it anyhow. Okay? Well, I can't blame him because I did say that, so he printed it, okay? So then 2 days later, here come these letters to the editor from 4 women. 2 of them whom I knew very well, had a good rapport. That's why I say, my dad was right. Watch your back. Because them 2 ladies went after me, and they've known me for years. But that's okay. God is good. He forgives everybody, so I can forgive him too. Even some of my family members wouldn't believe me. But you know what? I don't care. I made it through. You know why? Because God's on my side. And if nobody knows the truth, God was in this room when it was said, okay? And you know the ironic thing about this is, Gabe and I are friends, and all the while everybody else was pissed off, Gabe and I are talking on the phone and going out to lunch, okay? We still talk on the phone and go out to lunch, and people think we hate each other. Okay? But you know what? I've had a great life. Life is really fun. You council members are right. I say what I mean what I say, and if you don't like it, tough, okay? But I just want to say this, and I know everybody's worried because they know how I run my mouth, but I'm not gonna keep you much longer. But I just want to say, I've had a great life, a wonderful family, and no matter what accolades you get or what you achieve, always remember that family comes first. Family and God come first. So, I think right now, I just want to introduce you to my family. That's my husband, Herc, and he hears my mouth all the time. He's ready to go to sleep, okay? And my oldest son, my oldest child, Brian, my sister, Aini, my granddaughter, Nia, okay? In 1999, there was a picture of us, of she and I in the paper. How old were you then, Nia? I forget. Okay. And my daughter, Kim, right over there, and you know what? I always say how beautiful she is. And you know, I'm not just saying that because she's my daughter, but you know what? As beautiful as she is on the outside, she's twice as beautiful on the inside. And I am so proud of both my children. And I also have a nephew here, Brother Porter, and my niece Jerry, and my first cousins are here, Ben Williams and Rebecca Beatty. And the rest of them, they belong to the Elks. or I just know them. Okay, but we had fun. But I tell you, I do want to tell you this. When I was on city council, we used to have, like, I think we might have done it 3 times at our Elks Club. I had government night. And all the council people were there, all the people from Lycoming County, they was all there. We had a ball, didn't we, John and Bill? We had a good time. And I want to tell you about the Elks, too. I joined Nancy Wiley Wilson Temple, Improved Benevolent Protective Order of Elks of the World, in 1956. I'll never forget it. I was pregnant with Brian. And they had to take, I knew what I was doing. They had to take it easy on me, okay? But, you know, that is a great organization. A lot of people think that we just drink, but we do so much good all over the world. And I was made a life member last year. I've been a daughter for 56 years. No, it had to be 59. You're 59. Okay, 59 years. But anyway, now I lost my train of thought. But I'm talking about the Elks. But the Elks, that was the first organization that I really belonged to. And believe me, I watched my peers. I watched how they did things, and I learned protocol. And I learned how to speak in front of a group of people. That's what the Elks taught me. And we still teach that today. And it's the greatest, the biggest, the black organization in the world. And we have Elk homes all over the United States, even in Bermuda and someplace else. But anyway, then after that, when I was 28 years old, I was asked to be on the board of directors of the Bethune-Douglas Center. And once again, I learned. Maybe if I'd have stayed there, what happened wouldn't have happened to them, but whatever. But you know what? Like I said, we do nothing by ourselves. But I just want to say to all of you here, to the listening audience, thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance to serve in a way that I never, ever dreamed possible. There were so many blacks before me who ran for city council, only to be turned away at the polls. But I guess when I ran, they were ready. And I just want to say, from the bottom of my heart, that I want to thank everybody. I thank all of you for your kind words. And I'm hoping in 2 weeks, after what you said tonight, you got to say yes again. Thank you so much. I love you. Herc said I was a little too long, but that's okay because that's why I wanted to be last.
I guess I hadn't realized how quiet Chambers had gotten in recent years. Help me out. I think next item on the agenda is accept for filing. Have I missed anything? All right. Set for filing Finance Committee meetings of December 8th, 2015, Brandon Park Commission meetings of January 19th, 2016, Shade Tree Commission meeting minutes of January 19th, 2016, Controller reports of January 2016, and January financial statement. Can I have a motion and a second to accept those for filing?
So moved.
Second.
Hearing a motion, second. Comments or questions? Hearing none, Ms. Frank, on accepting those for filing?
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Novello?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and those are accepted. Next item on the agenda is announcements. The next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be held Thursday, March 17th at 7:30 in council chambers. Upcoming meetings include Monday, March 7th at noon is the Planning Commission, as well as the Fair Housing meeting. At 4 p.m. is the Recreation Commission. On Tuesday, March 8th at 1 p.m. is Bowman Field Commission in the Public Services Building. Wednesday, March 9th is O&E Pension Meeting at 3:30. Saturday, March 12th is the St. Patrick's Day Parade. Hope to see many of you there. Tuesday, March 15th is at 10 a.m. is the Blighted Property Committee meeting. At noon is Public Works Committee. 3:30 is Finance Committee meeting, and at 6:30 is HARB. On Thursday, March 17th at 10:30 a.m. is Zoning Hearing Board, 4 p.m. is Board of Health, and as I mentioned, 7:30 will be the City Council meeting. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have any comments or questions from members of council? Mrs. Katz.
If you can bear with me. Williamsport is celebrating its 5th annual St. Patrick's Day Parade Saturday, March 12th. The parade will kick off at the corner of Campbell and West 4th Street at 2 p.m. It will march east to Market Street through the heart of downtown. The parade will feature balloons, floats, local marching bands, and bagpipers, and wholesome fun for the entire family. Afterwards, visit the downtown shops, restaurants, and don't forget, St. Patrick's Day Pub and Restaurant Tour will be going on all day. Free trolleys will be traveling around Williamsport from 5 p.m. to 2 a.m., so hop around and check out the following locations on the Pub and Restaurant Tour. Also, Mayor Campana and the City of Williamsport are excited to announce the Christie Haberstroh Easter Egg Hunt on Saturday, March 19th at Brandon Park. The Easter egg hunt will begin at 2 p.m. and is open for all children up to the age of 10. This event is a great time for the children and a wonderful start to our Easter celebration. There will be candy-filled eggs, special prizes, and the only thing we ask is for participants to bring their own baskets or bags. Furthermore, no Easter celebration will be complete without a visit from the Easter Bunny. And finally, free face painting will be available to further get you into the spirit of things. So bring your children, grandchildren, and friends. Lastly, the City of Williamsport would like to inform the community that in the event of bad weather, the event will be held inside the Liberty Arena, March 19th at 2 p.m. Also, we would like to thank our sponsors, the VFW Post number 7863, Lang's Chocolate, Wegmans, Ichiban, Fast Break Inflatables, Pepsi, iHeartMedia, Community Arts Center, Biters Home Center, Backyard Broadcasting, Web Weekly, McDonald's, Little Caesars, Sun Gazette, White Deer Golf Course, McCormick Law Firm, and Utz. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Katz. Any other comments from members of council? Hearing none. Mayor, from you or the administration? All right, and from the general public. Mr. Miller. Name, address, record, please.
Scott Miller, 822 Tucker Street. Good evening, Mr. President, council members, mayor. I do remember Mrs. Whaley's infamous statement, and I thought it was very good. At the last council meeting, I brought the article in the newspaper about one town, I believe it's in Connecticut, using tag reader information and computer databases to get illegal cars off the street and catch people with warrants, etc. I saw more recently in the paper where the state police are considering getting tag reader cameras in their cars at approximately $18,000 per unit. I think that would be a good addition. Maybe we can't get it for all of our police vehicles at once, but some of them, and have it a rider with that same contract, the same technology, the same equipment that the state police have. That way, we can make Williamsport one of the more safest cities in Pennsylvania. I think it's a great time. You know, while they're buying theirs, we don't have to pay extra costs or anything, just get on board. And I think it might help the state police if communities in Pennsylvania want to use that same technology too. Maybe we could get a lower price, et cetera. And the last thing I want to bring up is I keep reporting to different entities about infrastructure not being what it should be. Namely catch basins, they're just crumbling if you look at them. We have people go around putting them stupid Chesapeake Bay plaques on there, but they can't look in the hole and see that the bricks and the concrete is falling in. We got spotlights on our police cruisers and we got cell phones that take pictures. We can't take a picture of that and go, maybe we need to address this. I don't consider that just negligence. I consider it gross negligence. Negligence is when you don't know something might be a problem. Gross negligence is when you go, nope, I'm not going to look at that because we can't afford to fix it. Well, what happens when one of them collapses and somebody's car goes into the hole? You're going to go, oh, well, we didn't know. You do know. You refuse to do your job and fix these things. I know they're expensive, but you know something? So is my vehicle, and I don't want to go in one. The pictures I brought, the rusted out storm grate. Explain to me how come we can't replace a rusted out storm grate. I get disgusted about it, just totally disgusted. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Any other comments from the general public? Hearing none, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh, I'm sorry. Saved by the bell. Could I have you approach, name and address for the record?
I'm Brian Whaley. I live at 93 Round Hill Road. From what this gentleman just said, I'm a retired state trooper. If the city could get that for the officers here, you'd catch a lot of bad guys. You ought to consider it. I know $18,000 is a stiff price, but it will save lives. It could save my life, you know, anyone's life. It's worth it. You know, I know other things need to be done in the city. And I'm a 1974 graduate of Williamsport High School. And I always did love this city because I was taught by my father and my mother. You know, I never really wanted to leave this city, but due to employment, I had to go. But as you see, I'm back, and I've been back for almost 10 years now. But what this gentleman said, it will save lives. Whatever you do, whatever you take away from here about that card reader for the license plates, and it will save lives, because there's a ton of people that have warrants. That is a beautiful tool to use for law enforcement. But other than that, I want to congratulate my mother, and not just my mother, my father, because most men would not do what he did for my mother. I'll tell you that now. And my sister and I got it from them. And she used to whoop me, trust me. No doubt about it. My sister has a presentation. Come on up here. Just bring it. What's wrong with you? Come on. Come on, Mom. Mom. It's just a token of appreciation from our family to you for your years of service to the city for 12 years and being the first African American, let alone a woman, and getting to be the president of Williamsport City Council. Thank you. And thank you for teaching us. And thank you for being my mother. Even though she did whoop me.
Oh, my gosh.
Because you like roses.
See, they know I like roses, right? And I was telling them about this rose that I saw at Kinley's jewelry store. Isn't that beautiful?
It is.
This is the rest of my life. Now you don't have to buy me any more roses. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love you.
And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.